Could you explain a little bit about your tech stack and where do you play a role and where are the other companies in the ecosystem and what kind of problems are being addressed?
What we are trying to do is create human agents that can take your calls. Probably voice is the natural mode of communication for human. Now to do that, as a human, you do three major things, right? You listen, you understand what's being spoken, you think of a response, and then you speak. What we have done is we have built models that deliver these pieces. So we have a speech to text model that understands what's being spoken, and then we have text to speech model that understands what emotion the response has to be spoken in and then speaks the response back. Human conversations don't have a lot of lag as such, right? The usual statistics with us is that humans respond within a second, right? That's the turn latency.
If they want to.
Exactly, yeah, if they want to, obviously. So in that case, the models have to be really fast, setting up the expectations right, what the technology can deliver today and what it can deliver 6 months down the line.
Hi Akshat, a very warm welcome to ETI podcast. Before we begin, could you tell us a little bit about your journey before starting Smallest AI and what inspired you to start?
Thanks, Radhika, for having me on the podcast. What inspired me to start? I think I've always been a builder myself at the core of my heart. The journey started as a young kid where I wanted to build jetpacks for myself. So that's what inspired me to go into engineering and build smart, intelligent machines. In university, I was building Formula student race cars, was leading the team for one season for a couple of national competitions, and then I visited Stanford for a competition and saw autonomous vehicles there, and that's what bugged me, right? That's what inspired me to go deep into data and intelligence and deep learning and stuff. And since then, I've been into data and intelligence layer. Was earlier part of a couple of early stage startups building data intelligence layer for electric vehicles and drones and stuff. And then post that, was working for Bosch for their autonomous vehicles for 3 years. Saw the journey from zero images to like a million images coming in and the models being trained on that. So that's been my journey. And all this while I wanted to start something of my own, because that seems like that has always been back of my mind to work something on your own and have something of your own. So I was just waiting for the right time and the right idea and the right people to work with.
Hmm. Very nice. So, what an interesting journey from building cars to building voice AI models. So, it's quite an inspiring and interesting journey, and many more years to it because you're very young. But yeah, for congratulations on building and starting your first startup. But for our listeners, could you tell us, in layman terms, what does Smallest AI do? What gaps did you see in the voice AI ecosystem which you wanted to address through your startup? And of all the problems you found, which is the most critical problem that the company is trying to solve today?
So I think when me and Sudarshan were discussing on what to work on, I think voice AI came as a natural choice because we felt that the research was on the cusp of inflection point. There were a lot of ripe use cases where industry needed a lot of support and very urgent use cases across the voice domain, right from automating their call centers to transcribing calls, etc. All of it. But the biggest gap that we saw was a lot of automating call center operations. And there what we realized is a lot of people were trying to just bring in third party providers and bridge them together and provide a solution. We tried that and it like the first customer we tried out before we raised any funds, we were just two people trying to figure out a solution for someone, and it didn't work. So when we dive deeper, we realize that until unless you don't have the control across the whole layer of all the layers of delivering a solution, um, especially in this case of where a lot of generative AI pieces are coming in, delivering the last mile use case becomes a quite of a challenge, especially with the nuances around emotion, dialects, nouns, etc. All of it. So that was the major insight. So what we decided is that we will build the foundational layer first, So the base models, the base speech models that power the voice agents, like the speech to text to speech, and the SLM. So across our journey around a year or a year and a half, we have built all of that foundational pieces. On top of it, we have built the orchestration layer that powers a voice agent, and then we have built a UI where you can plug and play different telephony, analytics, knowledge base, etc., all of it that delivers the last mile use case. So that is what we have built across 1.5 years, and that gives us the confidence and the edge to deliver the use cases in enterprises, such as like enterprises which need very strict control on quality and outcome to the last mile, and allows us to deliver at a very good pace and quality and cost.
So, Akshat, I will come. You mentioned that there is a user interface that you built where, organizations can plug and play and start to, using it, applying it to their organization very smoothly. I'll come back to that use case a little later in my podcast. But before that, you mentioned that you started building Smallest AI almost a year and a half back, right? And this space of generative AI and voice AI is evolving at a breakneck speed. What has changed since you started, and how has the technology and adoption both evolved in these last 18 months?
So I think the adoption has increased for sure, but in terms of the penetration in enterprise AI, I think we are still seeing a lot to be done. I mean, like the gap to be filled is still more than 95%, if I were to put a percentage to it across enterprises. In terms of research, I think there has been a lot of improvements across the foundational pieces of it. So and the hypothesis that we were playing around, that you don't need very large models to deliver these use cases, has played out really well in the last 1 year. So small powerful models have come up, small powerful architectures have come up, and we have been able to inculcate those insights into our proprietary models and deliver the use cases. So both in terms of research and it has picked up a lot of progress, but still a long way to go is what I would say.
So the research has still moved at a faster speed, but the adoption is slow, right?
Exactly. So that's always the case, right? So industry catches up, but I think in this case, the industries, what I've seen is everyone is very eager to go ahead and try it out, and they are okay to fail a little bit, and still are very positive about implementing voice AI, because the outcomes are like the risk to reward ratio is just too good to ignore.
Yeah, 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 I can understand. But tell me something, is this a slow adoption more prominent in India, or that's the case in the West also?
It's I think global, because I mean a year back, what where the technology was, it was still not ripe for production use cases. But slowly and it's not that people were not trying out a year back, but now like the cycles have improved, people are adopting a bit more faster, and also now the technology is much enhanced and ripe to deliver production use cases.
So, building for a bit further on that, now, as I mentioned, I broke it into two parts: technology and adoption. What is the biggest challenge you faced? I mean, though 18 months is a small period, but what is the biggest challenge you faced in both technology as well as adoption?
So I think the biggest problem I mean, challenge we faced in technology was sourcing the right sort of data for training the proprietary models that we have,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And that has been always been the case for deep learning,
Yes, yes,
even with my
yes.
previous experiences. Data plays a super critical and crucial role. So a lot of work has gone into building quality filters for data, how to segregate it, how to enrich it, how to use, like, how to filter out the correct data for your trainings and stuff. That I think is the biggest challenge. And in terms of adoption, I think a lot of sitting down with our customers, sitting them and like setting up the expectations, right, that what the technology can deliver today and what it can deliver 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line. So setting those expectations right in terms of where voice AI is today, what use cases it can tackle, and how does the roadmap look like in the voice AI for their voice AI transformation in their price. I think that is something that we have tried to do with a lot of our customers, and that has played out really well. So, but setting up that it's like setting up those expectations right was one of the key pieces that we had to solve. And I think these two, one, the data on the technology side, and the knowledge transfer and education on the adoption side were one of the major
Two big
challenges.
challenges. So on the data side, Akshat, what did you do to get the right data and for your models to be trained on the right data set? What were the steps you took to get that piece sorted?
So I think the raw data probably we took from vendors, right? So we have three major sources. One is we have third party vendors who get the data recorded in studios and get it labeled and annotated.
Okay,
Uh,
okay, okay.
Then we have a synthetic piece where we train larger models and try to generate synthetic data to enhance the golden data set that we have. And then we have some public data, which is like open source data allowed to be used, etc. All of it. But the crucial piece is around how do we put the quality filters there, like what data should go through. So that's the crucial piece on how do you check the quality, how do you check which data can be used for which use case and stuff and all that. So I think that's the most crucial piece.
So, Akshat, you mentioned third-party vendors whom you use for sourcing the data. Now, are you building in some particular verticals because the data you need has to be very specific to the vertical or workflows that you're building for, right? So, could you elaborate a little bit on this part?
So I think for the foundational pieces, the data can be more horizontal. It doesn't have to be very specific to a particular industry as such. It just has to be versatile enough to tackle general conversations, right? It has like ability to speak names, numbers, nouns, general, etc. And then you can, based on the use case, if need is there, we always fine tune on top of the specific data. But in general, the strategy is that just train the foundational model as versatile as possible.
Okay, so if you're building for banking or industry or for a hiring workflow, you don't need data specific to that use case?
Yeah, I mean 99% of the times, no.
Oh, that's I didn't know about it. That's interesting. Okay, now could you explain a little bit about your tech stack? I mean, if, again for a layman, and and I mean it's an entire voice AI ecosystem where I'm sure smallest AI has a role to play, and there are many other companies in that ecosystem. So could you explain a tech stack for a layman, and where do you play a role, and where are the other companies in the ecosystem, and what kind of problems are being addressed?
So I think as I said, right, we are a full stack voice AI company, so we are present across a lot of places in the ecosystem. So if I were to explain it very simply, right, what we are trying to do is create human agents that can take your calls, right, that in simple terms. And why that's needed is because a lot of calls go unanswered. All right, there is not enough capacity to tackle all of the calls in voice, and probably voice is the natural mode of communication
Yeah,
for
yeah,
human,
yeah.
right? So now to do that, as a human, you do three major things, right? You listen, you understand what's being spoken, you think of a response, and then you speak based on the emotional context and the information that's available to you. Especially in a business context, that's much more confined because you have a specific knowledge that's available to you for a particular query that has come in, or a particular information that you want to give to your user, right? So you have an information that's available to you, and you do these three basic pieces. So what we have done is we have built models that deliver these pieces. So we have a speech to text model that understands what's being spoken. Then we have a SLM that takes in the knowledge that's available and what's being spoken by the user, or what's the query, generates a response to that. And then we have text to speech model that understands what emotion the response has to be spoken in, and then speaks the response back. And this is done across a telephony. So essentially we connect this whole system to a telephony system, and you can just call and at the back of it, it can be a human, it can be a voice agent, essentially, which is solving a use case. So in a very simpler term, this is what the technology that's working behind it.
And your SLMs are based on some large language models, right?
So SLMs for us, by definition, are small language models, which are below 12 billion sort of range, right? And these are essentially, we are not trying to build it from scratch, but what we are trying to do is fine tune open source models, but essentially on a proprietary data, and also tweaking their conversational ability so that they feel much more conversational. So a lot of open source models or a lot of LLMs are much more verbose. They are built for text. They are not built for
Yes,
voice,
yes.
right? So we are doing that sort of engineering and fine tuning and post training on top of the models, and then doing that piece.
No, 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 I understand. And the verbose part is very clear because we have all been users of chat GPTs of the world, and that verbose part was very clear. So, Akshat, latency and cost are two biggest factors for any customer whom would you would be advising and the usage of your product, right? How do your models or compressed model address this issue?
Yeah, so I think latency has been a core piece to us, right? We always wanted to. I mean, one of the core hypotheses is that, or core, a dream is that, can we enable like population scale interactions between humans and machines through our models or our platform? Now, to do that, obviously, human conversations don't have a lot of lag as such, right? The usual statistics with us is that humans respond within a second, right? That's the turn latencies.
If they want to.
Exactly, yeah, if
Yeah,
they
yeah,
want to,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
So
yes.
in that case, the models have to be really fast. And one of the ideas, again, it ties back to small models, is that since your models are smaller, the latency becomes faster and stuff. So latency has been a core piece to us, and these are the benchmarks we are trying to breach, and we have breached already. So like turn latencies are below a second now, and the models are faster. For example, the speech to text kind of transcribes 10 seconds of audio in within 60 to 70 milliseconds. The SLM model generates the first byte in around 100 milliseconds or less. And then text to speech model, again, the time to first byte is within 200 milliseconds, and that's P95. So impressive numbers, and this allows us to control the latencies to a very large extent, where it feels all like very natural.
Okay. Okay. I'll come to the latency and the benchmark part a little bit during the next some of the questions. But now coming back to the implementation part of it, moving from technology, what are the strongest use cases in enterprises that is seeing a lot of pull and requirement for the voice AI models that you've built? And could you give us some real life examples where you have implemented this?
So I think we are very doubling down in the banking and finance sector, although the platform is fairly horizontal. But we feel that banking and finance sector is where a lot of urgent use cases are there, and the industry is ready to experiment and adopt and move ahead, and they have a lot of use cases there. Some of the strongest use cases that we have seen is around collections, for example. Collections for lending. So lending can be for any of the products, financial products that they have. And everyone has different strategy, but a lot of collections calls. That's one. Lead qualification is one, where you have like a list of leads that have come up, and then you want to call them and figure out whether they are still interested or not in the product. Lead generation is one, where someone has dropped on your website, or some interest, and then you want to call them up and see if uh, what they were looking for. So these are some of the strongest use cases in terms of outbound. um, in inbound use cases, I think customer support, at least 60 to 70% of queries in customer support can be solved through voice AI. And I think customer support looks very different for different institutions, but yeah, but I think 60 to 70% is mostly regular FAQ level stuff, which can, and some advanced level, which can be solved by voice AI today. And then the last mile where the queries are very complex, etc., still need to be addressed by humans. So this is the breakdown of the largest use cases that I see today.
Interesting. And actually, this has been a unanimous feedback during my conversations with several companies who are in voice AI. That they're seeing the biggest requirement from the banking sector, BFSI sector at least. So is this trend, I mean, this trend is visible in India. Is the same trend applicable globally as well?
Yeah, yeah. I think so. I mean, as I said, right, banking and finance does the most number of calls across the globe. So it's a global phenomena.
Mm-hmm. And are you, are you targeting Indian companies? I mean, where do you see a large set of your customers coming? Are you building for India or you're building for international geographies?
We have been a global, like the mindset has always been global since day one, right? So we wanted to dominate globally. And today I think we have users across both India and US. So those are the geographies we are starting with. And today our customer base looks like 50%, 50-50 across India and US.
But when you're building for India, language plays a very important role because very few people in India would be conversing in English, right? Most of them, while they can read English or they can understand, but they're fluent in their own language. So when you are building for India, strong use cases for regional languages, and are you trying to address that?
Yeah, so today I think what we have is we have our models are able to handle top 10 Indian languages very well. Um, being the platform has been tested extensively across the top five Indian languages, and then the other languages, as and when use cases will come in, probably will test it in production. But at least in numbers, they do pretty well.
So, Akshat, what is your GTM strategy and how do you price your solution?
So the GTM strategies, right? As I said, going after banking finance, mostly, through reaching out to our potential customers through podcasts like this, through investors, through warm connects, and our customers who recommend us to other people. So these are the usual channels we have had. In terms of pricing, it's the calling. So we have like two pieces to it. Some people can just take our model APIs and they want to use our speech to text or text to speech or SLM independently. So that is priced per input. So like per piece of input. For example, speech to text, the input is speech, right? So uh, per minute of audio transcribed. So we charge on the basis of that. In text to speech, input is characters. So we define pricing on the basis of characters. And we also give it in terms of minutes so that you can understand better. And then the voice calling product, that is again charged per minute of calling. So that is how the pricing differs.
So I am sure because it's a solution, it's not a plug and play product that your company creates. So I'm sure you spend a lot of time in understanding the customer problem and deploying a custom made solution, right? So without taking names, if you can share a use case that you're really proud of, the problem, the approach to solve it, and before and after metrics of the solution being deployed.
Yeah, so I think some of the strongest solutions that we have delivered is across, collections, for example. If let's take that example, I think the usual journey of a voice AI use case when you have to automate calling starts from gathering requirements, as you said, right? So how many calls you are doing per week? What is the SOP that your calling operator today uses? Or if it's a new use case, what sort of guardrails you want to put in there, right? So we spend a lot of time with the customer understanding these pieces that go into these guardrails go into the voice agent, that you cannot speak these things, you cannot go beyond these boundaries, and this is the knowledge base that you have. So these pieces we collect beforehand before building the solution. um, One of the integral pieces is also integration. So what sort of where do you want to collect the data from, and which systems do you want to connect our voice agent to? Because a use case usually it starts from a system where your user data resides, then you want to generate a call to them, and once the call is done, you put back the data somewhere, right? So I think um, input and output, we try to understand what are their input and output systems, how in which format they want the data, what sort of voice they want to use for this particular use case. So these are all sort of, questions that we ask first, and then we go into the solutioning piece, which is like very easy for us because the platform is very modular and it can be quickly configured. But getting the requirements piece very right is very important.
And once the conversations are done, I'm sure it would be converted into text-based insight for the management to reuse, right?
Yes.
So you remember in the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned there's a user interface where you can, do the configuration. So is this user interface so extremely user-friendly that the organizations can do the deployment themselves, or they have to assist, you have to assist them?
Yeah, so I think we are building every day. I think the product is progressing and it's becoming much more user friendly. But as of today also, if someone spends like some 10-15 minutes understanding the system, they can actually, go ahead and build their first voice agent and deploy it on a put it on a telephone number, and it can start doing calls. I think that's fairly possible. That has been always the mindset, that allow users to come in and build their solutions fairly quickly. The only challenge becomes is, I think they should understand how to put their I mean, the way a human understands the SOP, etc., has to be translated to a way, the way SLM or a generative model understands it. And I think that requires a bit of learning curve, in my opinion. And I think once that's done properly, although we have examples for it and stuff and all that, and once that is done properly, it's a fairly easy job.
Okay, let me make your job a little tougher. So, say I am a CEO of a, BFSI organization with a team of call center people, etc., and I have heard of this solution, smallest AI, that has come in the market. What should be my 90 to 100-day strategy and execution plan before, I can go live and running, for my customers with this solution?
Yeah, so I think what I usually suggest to anyone, any leader who I meet in this space is, let's start with one use case which is like critical to you today, right? Where you are struggling in terms of capacity, etc. Let's start there, right? And let's try to automate that first in the first 60 days or so. And where I would start is first understanding how is it done today, right? So understanding all of the pieces, how it's done today, right from where the data is generated, how the user is called, is there a particular script, how the user is called, or it's free flowing, and then where is the data stored, how's the data stored and stuff, and what are the integrations involved. And once, so that takes a bit of time interacting with the team, right? So first 15 days looks like that. And once that is there, the first iteration is available probably within a week. You do the first POC with that. You run with it with some calls, iterate it once, and then you keep iterating, and probably in 60 days or so, you have like your first production ready use case, like ready to go live, etc., all of it. And the reason it needs iterations is because we always miss details as humans, right? So the first thing when it's ready, there will be some things that needs tweaks and stuff and all that, and these insights only come in when you go live with some people. So what I suggest is, this is an iterative process, and it's not like a one shot go, that it's not like SaaS platforms where you you push a button and the outcome will always be the same, right? It's a generative process. So we have to be a bit patient, and we have to treat it in an iterative manner, and that's when the true success happens.
And do you pick the highest impact use case or the easiest to deploy use case for you? When you mentioned you can pick one use case and start.
I would leave it up to their choice on what use case they want to pick. I would usually suggest that let's pick the highest impact one, which is critical to their business today, right? And then let's try to show and create value and impact there. And I think if that's there, then all of the low hanging and high hanging fruits, like, both are possible.
So, Akshat, as a founder who's building in this space, how do you see this voice AI ecosystem evolving in next 12 to 18 months? And with those changes coming in, how do you see your product evolving?
So I think in next 12 to 18 months, I see a lot of adoption happening across enterprises. I already see that happening, and I think uh, probably when I say that today only 5 to 10% enterprises have started using it in production, that number would probably go to a very large extent, and around 50% or more than that maybe will be, will have some use cases live in production with voice AI. Having said that, how I see my product evolving is, I mean, just I think we have all the fundamental pieces right, and now we have to, churn up the iterative process, like keep improving at each step of it. So keep improving the models, try to be the world's best across all of the pieces, and I think that's the goal for next 12 to 18 months. So yeah, I mean, some of the moonshot things that we have for is, can we, like, how we are in the top three today in the world in terms of numbers and quality and feedback. And the idea is, how do we become the world's best across all of the models, and also across the application on what value we bring to our customers.
Now, Akshat, I always do this. I ask, and this is always my last question. What is your advice for our very young listeners who are in college and look up to founders like you building in voice AI system ecosystem? What should they study? What should they build upon? How should they try and fail? I'm sure you would not want them to start building automotives and cars and then move to voice AI. So, what is your advice for those young listeners?
I think my general advice is just pick a problem statement that's dear to you and go very deep into it, and pour your heart into it. And I think something comes out of it usually. And I think that's what I've learned from my journey. Everything that I've picked, I deeply cared about it and went very deep into it. And that has always given me very good results. So I think that's the only advice, that just pick a problem statement that you care about it, and just don't get distracted a lot to do a lot of things at once. Just do one thing at a time, but do it very deeply and very, very, like, just with all your heart, and just go all in for it.
No, no, this was a very enlightening conversation. And thank you so much, Akshat, for joining us. And we wish you all the best for, being in the top most position in voice AI ecosystem, moving from being one of the top three to the topmost. And with this, we wrap up our conversation. Stay tuned for more conversations about AI ecosystem. Until then, bye. Have a nice day.